Hello, 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 New Haven, and just the internet, wherever people are joining us from. This is Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and I'm really excited to be back today with Caroline Nobo and Hector Rodriguez talking about the release of Volume 2 of the Notebook, and we'll get into what that is if you're saying, what's the Notebook, at Next Haven, which is happening tomorrow night through the Justice Collaboratory at the Yale Law School. I just dumped a bunch of information on listeners. So I do want to just say really quickly that The Notebook is a non-academic magazine that blends academic research with real voices from our community, such as people who have been incarcerated, mothers who have lost children to gun violence, and individuals leading efforts to build a more just and safe society, which is I think always urgent work, but we are living through sort of a five-alarm dumpster fire that affects the most vulnerable among us first and often hardest. And so I think it's especially urgent work right now. So I want to turn it over to both of you. And Caroline, I'm wondering if you can speak really quickly, just for folks who maybe don't know about the Justice Collaboratory, what it is and the work that it does.
Great. Lucy, thank you so much for having Hector and I on today. We are so excited about this party in New Haven tomorrow night, and we are so excited about this publication, which, just FYI for everyone, it is free. I'm sure we'll get into that in ways that everyone can read it. But this is published by the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School, which really, we wear a couple of hats, but sort of the main one is that we are a social science research center embedded within Yale Law School. And our work is really about building a more just, effective, and democratic criminal legal system. We were founded in 2015 by two professors at Yale, Tracy Mears and Tom Tyler, and we're comprised of an interdisciplinary network of scholars from all across the country. And that's really important because what that means is we're not just looking at criminal justice reform through the legal lens or through the law, but we have doctors and historians, psychologists, philosophers, poets, political scientists, and they're all recognized as leaders in their field. And we all come together and we are sort of committed to this idea of academic rigor and collaboration to advance policies that help build strong, safe communities where, everyone can thrive.
And within that, you have this it's still a relatively new publication. I think if it's volume
Yep.
2, like we're still talking about a baby, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about the birth of the Notebook. And Hector, I think this would also be a beautiful place for your voice to come in.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about how we ended up here at the Notebook, and then maybe Hector, you can talk about what it meant to come in as,
Absolutely.
number on this second volume. And Lucy, I love that you said it was like my baby because I've been telling everyone, like, listen, I don't have children, so this party is my baby shower, so you better come. So
I also want to say, like, intellectual, I see this as someone who is both like a mother to a human being and a mother to lots of cultural and artistic projects. Like intellectual labor there's like a gestational period, you give birth to the work. So yeah,
Yes.
I totally buy that.
Yeah, it's what it feels like. And it takes us, and I'd love to share a little bit about how long it takes for us when we go from like a theme all the way to the actual holding the publication in our hands. Um, so, the notebook is the first volume was centered around community vitality. And what we really wanted to do was create something, you sort of said this in the beginning, that covered a range of topics, but felt really accessible to someone outside of academia. Because, just what we realized is we had all these experts, they're doing amazing work. And they realized, and we realized, sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, all their expertise is like trapped. It's trapped behind a paywall for a journal. It's trapped in the classroom. It's trapped in an elite institution like Yale. And it's just really not accessible, right? And the average person is not going to go on a deep dive on Google Scholar to understand the science of camaraderie, right? We've got to like bring it to them. And so we wanted to do this. And the thing about the notebook is that we've kind of tried to make it as diverse as possible so the material jumps off the page at you. So it has graphic articles, poetry, we have legal case studies, stories, and we try to cover it all. So it has been a fascinating experience to a year ago say, okay, our theme is solidarities. Is that going to be timely a year from now? And then a year from there be like, okay, we're here. We've done it. We have 18 pieces, amazing contributions. Now we're sending it out into the world. And right before I'll hand it off to you, Hector, by saying one of the parts of this that is so rewarding, so cool, was a part of a job that I never got to do before is that there's original art. And so we solicit these pieces from contributors and then we match them. We had to find Hector, and Hector had to want to work with us. And then I'll let him tell you about his journey and what it meant to have to create all this art, which is behind me, by the way, for those who are looking. This is one
I
of
was
his
going to say
pieces.
it's behind, and Hector, is the art behind you, is that your art as well?
Um, yes, this is my art.
I
And the one behind Caroline is our art.
I love that you're framed by, I don't know if you know that you're
By
framed by
the
the
wings.
butterfly wings and it feels so poetic.
Uh,
It's just beautiful. Like, well done. I
thank
don't have
you.
that degree of coordination, so good.
Well, like Caroline, I have to thank you for having us here and giving us the opportunity to speak more about this opportunity. For me, so I'm a formerly incarcerated person. I did 27 years and 2 months in New York State, and 6 months after my release, I landed at Yale through the Yale Prison Education Initiative, which opened many doors for me, right? And one of those doors was this, right? To get and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how it got to me, but somebody sent me the link that the notebook was looking for formerly incarcerated artists and things like that. And so I contact Caroline and Dana and met with them, and it was fun. But for me, what it means to have my art in a publication like this, at the moment, it was just a great opportunity, right? I'm at Yale, I'm formerly incarcerated. I get to show my work in some type of magazine or something to do with Yale. That's all I'm thinking. But then they're handing me over the poetries and the reading materials from the people that's going to be featured in this notebook, right? And one of the message that will always resonate with me is Dawn's message, right? Who is a mother who lost her child to gun violence in New Haven, right? And I was sharing with Dana and Caroline, what does that mean to me? At one point, I was the other person, right? Like, obviously, I don't have nothing to do with the case with her child, but I committed a similar crime, right? I pulled the trigger, right? And reading her story and reading how this mother, she's not looking for revenge, right? She's looking for justice, but she's looking to figure out how are guns landing on the hands of young people, right? And how could that change? And that moved me. It moved me in so many different ways because I may never understand the harm that I caused to the mother of the person that life I took, right? But listening to her and being a father myself, I'm like, damn, that's the only thing that came to me is like, wow. And so to have my work featured here and on the solidarity, which, like I tell people, the word solidarity is a beautiful word, just like the word family and community. But these are words that also come with its trials and tribulations, right? It takes a lot to maintain a family. It takes a lot to maintain a community. It takes a lot for people of different point of view, different experiences to come together for a purpose, right? It's there's going to be times that there's a little hostility, disagreements, but just to have the focus point on we all here regardless of our different walks in life, to make a change, that to me is also powerful. So like the piece that's behind Caroline, is I was trying to figure out what would be a good piece for this. So I'm reading, but in the reading, I read something along the path of if we could see each other. And to me, I remember always growing up, I always wanted to be seen, right? But I just didn't know the right way that I wanted to be seen. And to come in a group of people that want to make a difference and we all want to be seen in our best light and we want to provide a stage where everybody could be seen and heard, but in a way that it just make us better, it's a rewarding feeling. And to me, this is like when I get my copy of the notebook, it's something that is going to mean a lot to me, mainly because of Dawn's story. And also uh, um what's the guy, Caroline, that he went to visit his friends?
Yeah, so there's a poem in the volume from a man who was incarcerated, released, and then has to, gets to go back to the facility, and then he's the visitor, right? So the poem is called "The Visit" by Jason Rodriguez, and so that was the very first piece that Hector had to do. We sent him
Yeah,
this poem, and we were like, okay, like come up with some art, and that
yeah,
process. And we would set up a Zoom. So we would set up a Zoom with Hector and the artist. So Hector got to meet Dawn, Hector got to meet all of these people. And that's a really important part of this is sort of the connection. So then Hector can go and create the art versus just this static poem that he'd be reading otherwise.
yeah, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about the art making process and both like there are these two sides. I feel like when you're making art that is related to these really like heavy topics that are deeply personal. Like when we're talking about a bereaved parent, that is of course deeply personal, but it's also owing to a lot of like systemic and structural failures, right? When we're talking about like why we have guns on the streets, which is not just a New Haven issue. It's a national issue, but it's sort of like horribly and uniquely a pretty American issue. When we talk about things like that, when we talk about higher rates of incarceration for Black and Latino people, especially young men and men across generations, and the way that it just tears apart families and also just like lives and friendships. And Hector, when you were speaking, I kept thinking of a piece that Markeisha Ricks, when she was still reporting for the New Haven Independent, wrote several years ago, where she was sitting in a courtroom and a judge was deciding a young man's sentence after he had taken someone's life. And she wrote a really beautiful op-ed. She wrote like this, a straight news piece, but then she wrote a very beautiful op-ed about the number of lives that are sort of taken when we experience gun violence in any community. And I'm looking at your beautiful acrylic on cardboard piece for Dawn, and it's a sunflower. It's multiple sunflowers. And we know that sunflowers remediate toxic soil, and they are sort of recognized as for that purpose. And in New Haven, there was a whole sunflower planting initiative in the Hill neighborhood, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And so I'm wondering for you if you can talk a little bit about both the healing power of creating art. We know like there's Caroline, when you're talking about data, there's the data there that it is healing and restorative, but also how you protect your peace when you're doing art about really heavy stuff.
Thank you for that. That's a great question because I create two type of artwork, one on mass incarceration, which is very heavy, and one on ecofeminism, which is the like similar to what I did for Dawn. And the ecofeminism reminds me of my childhood in Puerto Rico and it bring peace to me where the mass incarceration is always heavy on me because of what I endure in prison, right? And so in reading Dawn's piece, I said, okay, here we have a person that is choosing to be different, right? and is choosing to bring her light to a topic that is so heavy, is so dark, and like you said, it's part of the fabric of our culture here in the United States. And I said it has to be a sunflower. It has to be a sunflower because she's bringing light, and it's similar like the phoenix. She's rising from the ashes. And again, I'm not a mother. I'm a father, but I could only imagine the pain she endured, right? So I'm trying to understand, and I could never reach this, but I was trying to like get an idea of how she felt and how I could try to give her a piece, but also through her give a piece to the mother of the person's life that I took, right? And I'm like, how can I come here and try to put something together? And so I chose a cardboard for many reasons. Is that in this country we consume a lot. And we have a problem with consuming, and cardboards is something that we walk by like nothing. We kick it to the curb or whatever. And sadly, how Dawn's son passed away was he was shot in the street and was left there to die, right? And the community didn't even call the ambulance, right? And so I went and took a cardboard and I said, people walk by him and didn't give him a look. People walk by cardboards and they don't give him a look. So I want to create this piece on a cardboard, use the color orange, which is, to me, it's like the midday sun, and powerful like that, and try to render an image where she's in power, but through her humility and just that, I'm humbled by her way of going about all of this. And so it's in that way. And how I protect my peace is I go through stages. There are times that I'm angry, right? I'm angry at the system, the judicial system, because I feel that it's very unjust. But like I tell people, right? Yes, there's racism. Yes, there's poverty. There's a lot of bigger issues that's affecting us. But at the end of the day, we all have choices, and the choices we make, we have to also understand that we're contributing and we need to make different choices, right? So we can't just blame the bigger system. We also need to take responsibility. And so I just wanted to do something where I felt I could at least in just honor both Dawn, but also the mother of the person's life that I took. And hopefully, she could have a heart of forgiveness like Dawn has. But if she don't, I wouldn't blame her as well.
Caroline, I first of all, just thank you for that. Um, Caroline, I also want to ask you, like, as a reporter and a member of this community, I have found that often storytelling is a door. So, sometimes it's a window, sometimes it's a mirror, often it's a door that you're stepping through. Um, and it provides, I think, a space for people who may be intimately familiar with the issues that we're talking about, or who may have some degree of remove, to engage with this subject matter in a way that you're absolutely right. Like, I love a peer-reviewed academic paper, uh, but it's not how the vast majority of New Haveners are going to engage with something. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve with storytelling through the notebook. And then also, like, how do we get this out into the hands of the people who need it, both because they're not thinking about these issues and the people who need it for their own healing journey?
Yeah, that's great. And as one thing is we're talking about getting it out in the community and hearing about, Hector talk about Dawn, I did just want to say that they're at this party tomorrow night at Next Haven. Dawn will be there. She's on our panel and it's a great opportunity. She'll be there with Hector. They'll be in conversation with one another. So it's a great opportunity to sort of hear this story from Dawn and what it meant for her as well. And also just a couple of things that Hector said sparked my mind, and I wanted to share. The first time we did this volume and with our first artist, people hear like, oh, we're doing a publication and we're going to cover things like incarceration and violence and, the injustices of our criminal legal system. And all the art got really dark. People were like, our graphic designer the first time around, there were like a lot of bars and dark colors. And, our first artist, Chitin Madureque, had never been inside a prison before. And so she's trying to manage, and we had to say, actually, we're trying to do something else here. We're talking about hope. We're talking about vitality. We're talking about humanity. So you can feel free to use bright colors and lean into your ecofeminism art, Hector, not your mass incarceration art for this. And I just want to say that like that part of the art has been really interesting for me as the sort of an advisor of the final product and as an editor, right? Like how people so naturally hear this topic and they want to go somewhere really like really dark. I'm like, no, we're here to help you remind you that there is like light in places and there is hope still here, even though structurally these systems have been designed to oppress hope and oppress solidarity. It still remains and it is nurtured and it is flourishing, even if no one wants us to see it, maybe. So that was sort of always been interesting to me about when we get the first versions of the art, they're like very literal. And then as sort of getting this out there, there are a few things you can always expect from the notebook, okay? The first is that it will always be free. You can always find it on our website, which is justicehappenshere.yale.edu. You can download it for free. If you come to the event tomorrow night, there will be hard copies available, but that's a small, we want this to be a free digital publication that's super easy to access. First, it will, so the second thing is that it's a space for all stakeholders. And that's really important to us. This volume has one of the most, sort of famous social scientists out there, Jennifer Richardson, wrote a piece in this, and she also shares the volume with Dawn, right? With Hector, with people who this is maybe their first major publication in a lot of ways. So that's really important for us, right? This is about a unique, diverse set of voices covering the topic sort of from all angles. And second, it's always going to include unique formats to draw you in, right? And that's really important. I mentioned we have this graphic depicted article. There's even a maze that takes you through what the civil commitment process looks like, which a lot of people don't know much about. That's in Connecticut and Massachusetts. So I think that's how we make it accessible. It's free, range of voices, and various depictions of the information we're trying to share.
And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how this dovetails with the broader mission of the Justice Collaboratory, which has done just some really wonderful work and will continue to be doing wonderful work in the community.
Yeah, that's a great question. Ultimately, I think collaboration is the thread that pulls everything together with the Justice Collaboratory, whether that's an interdisciplinary collaboration between scholars or between a social science research center and the city it's located in, right? Like we really believe in the transformative power of partnership. And we use that holistically. I think a lot of our work is about creating a world where the individual and the collective matter on the same field, on the same plane. And I'm very lucky to have a group of colleagues that understand how important it is to engage with New Haven beyond just it being our zip code. So this is our second event that we're hosting at Next Haven. We hosted an event years ago for New Haven artists, Winfred Rimbert. That was an amazing night. When it came time to launch this second volume, it felt there's a huge connection to New Haven, right? There's a piece from Dawn. There is a two pieces from the ACES Educational Center of the Arts. Two students contributed pieces. There's a piece about the True Unit at Cheshire Correctional. Like, this is actually a really Connecticut-centric, New Haven-centric volume. So I personally didn't really want to have the event at Yale. I wanted it to be public and I wanted it to be in the community. And we're just super lucky that Next Haven is here, and it's a great place to host this event.
And I should say Next Haven a couple years ago, I mean, it's timely for many reasons. But Next Haven a few years ago hosted an exhibition from founder Titus Kaphar and then Freedom Reads founder Dwayne Betts of redacted
Yeah.
documents that was like incredibly moving. I think it was maybe in 2021. I don't know. I don't know what time is anymore.
Yeah. Right around there.
I mean, it feels very timely in that way too, because I think, you have folks that sort of are within Next Haven's orbit that are doing some of this work as well.
Yeah. And Dwayne is a member of the Justice Collaboratory, and I'll blow your mind here with how small the world is. The font that we use in the notebook is redaction, is the font that Titus and Dwayne, came up with for that publication. So, all roads lead, right? It's all roads lead to this thing. But yeah, our members, I think to be a member of the Justice Collaboratory, what we're saying is that we want to see that you are living and doing your work in the world, right? In what way Dwayne has a law degree, but Dwayne is building libraries and prisons in the real world. A lot of this, the Justice Collaboratory is a social science research center, but we're hosting events in the community. We're about theory-driven policies that will make positive change in our criminal legal institutions. And that is something that I think sets us apart and sets the notebook apart, right? It's about being in the world. This is a rigorous publication, okay? It has a lot of gravitas, and it also is heightening the expertise of the lived life in the world.
I also want to ask, Hector, we could go to you first. So earlier this year, the playwright Terrence Riggins, who is just a New Haven treasure, presented a show through Longworth Theater, but because they're itinerant, it was in downtown New Haven, called Unbecoming Tragedy, and it was set in solitary and about sort of this reckoning that he has with memories of his mother during his time in solitary. And he's had wanted to write the show for probably over 10 years and worked on it for a decade. But he and I did this interview, and at the time, I was like overly caught up on like, is this a play about abolition? Is this an artwork about reform? And he was like, why are you splitting hairs over a broken system instead of thinking about the system we have and the ways that we can be working? Like stop using all this elevated language and just like let's engage with this. And so, I'm curious for both of you, has this, like, obviously you are already in work where you are thinking deeply about the prison system and the ways in which it is broken, but has this moved your thinking or shifted your thinking or sort of like set off new light bulbs as you work on these specific stories and Hector, as you work on these specific artworks?
One of the things that I got from reading these different stories is that empathy is the soul of solidarity, right? It's like the backbone that when a group of people want to be in solidarity, we have to see each other in each other, right? When it comes to terms like abolition and reforming, I tell people that I consider myself an abolitionist, but my way of doing that is reforming to abolish. And what that means to me is that education and the arts saved my life, right? And so I feel that higher education will give you the critical thinking skills that you need to think critically and that the arts will allow you the space and time to work on your past trauma, which leads a lot of us to make poor choices. And I believe that IQ and EQ needs to live in a community together, right? And I think that the notebook is doing just that, right? When you said that the notebook may have data, it may have storytelling and all these other different things, so it may cater to a certain group over another. I think it's catering to everyone, right? Because it's bringing together the IQ and EQ. And sometimes we fail when we try to say, oh, no, the arts belong here and education belongs there. No, we all belong everywhere. And we just need to find the right space for, the right space to do the right thing, but all do it in a way where there's empathy and we're seeing each other in each other.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing that really jumped. There were a couple of patterns, right? We saw as the pieces start coming in. I at the beginning of the volume, I have to like sort of write this like letter from the editor. It's the very last thing that happens. I write it like the day before we go to the publisher, right? Just so I can really sit with all the pieces. And so little patterns jump out by that after you've been reading everything for a year. And one thing that I love is that so many people came to us to, we asked them to write a piece. And then I don't know if you heard this on Vabs. And then when we asked them to write a piece, they said, I don't want to write this alone. Like it feels really counterintuitive to write a piece about a time I experienced solidarity or was in solidarities with someone as a singular voice. Like I want to be in conversation with the person that did this with me. And the theme that followed on that is that this work is really hard. And it's you have to see it through. And you might not it might not be an immediate match. You might not show up to do some work together, to be part of the collective, and it feels like, oh yeah, I get you and you get me, and this is going to be an awesome relationship. Actually, there is a period of getting to know one another and to build trust with one another before you can start doing the work, and it doesn't happen overnight. Um, and that really resonated for me time and time again in these stories. Like not a single person showed up and talked about their stories and said, and it was a walk in the park. It was so easy for me to to set up a mutual aid fund for bail. Like that was easy, right? Like no one is saying that. Everyone is saying I was dogged in my pursuit of humanity and I was dogged in my pursuit of solidarity with these other people. And I didn't give up, which is something we really need to hear right now.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
but you also bring up, and so I'm curious, for both of you about your like hopes and dreamy dreams for this as it goes out into the world, because as you're saying this, like, no, it's not easy work. And it has always been, I am of the mind that like we have always been in a system that is leveled against people. Like that's not new. That didn't happen after 47 got elected. That was true under Joe Biden, in my opinion. But at the same time, when people talk about the difficulty in, starting a mutual aid fund or starting a bail fund, it's also why we see such a high rate of burnout among organizers. I mean, it's also why people like, I think lawyers stay at organizations like Legal Aid, for instance, sometimes for a long time, but sometimes they burn out and they just can't sustain that level of work. And also, I think even if they go in being pretty optimistic about the work, it's hard because you have a lot of losses. And I think that's certainly true of the carceral state in this country. And so, how can people also step up, hopefully readers of this publication who will get a copy and read it and then reread it and annotate and think about what they're reading. But also if people want to be in solidarity with folks, and if people want to be in this social justice fight, how can they be stepping up and making meaningful change?
Um, I could start on that one. So, since I've been home, I've done work for Marian Kaba, right? And she was someone that I started reading when I was incarcerated, right? And one of the things that stood with me out of the many things that I read from her is do the work from a place that is safe for you, right?
Mhm.
And do what you can. Because if we all do what we can, a lot of people think they don't have resources, right? And I tell them, no, if you're English teacher, that's a resource. There's somebody, you could help somebody write a cover letter, whatever, right? There's different type of resources that we have, but we're so used to having these things that we don't think other people could make use of them, right? But in my opinion, right, do what you can from a place that feels safe for you, right? And also understand that it's okay to be in disagreement, right? Like I tell people, what's going to determine how strong of a friendship we have is how we solve our problems, right? It's not that we are in disagreements or whatever. It's okay to disagree and hear different points of view, but since we have this hope, this light that we want a better community for ourselves and everybody in the community and around it, let's work towards that. That's the goal, right? The goal is that we have hope for each other and we see each other in a better light. And like I want to break down real quick the painting behind on Caroline, right? One of the tricks that I learned is how to attract people and then tell them a very complicated story, right? My trick is colors, right? I love colors. I stole my color palette from the butterflies and hummingbirds, right? Because I don't know color theory. But I know that if it's very colorful, it's going to call your attention. And the more you look at it, you're going to see lines bumping against each other. You're going to see colors contrasting against each other. But guess what? It's colorful, it's bright. So it's worth looking at it, right? And this is how the solidarity work is, right? We all here from different walks of life. And we know that the colorful thing is a better environment for ourselves, our community, our children, right? And it doesn't matter if, what different, and I'm using line as a metaphor, whether it's a thick line, a wavy line, or whatever, we're here. And we all want to make a difference. Let's work this out where the wavy line could go right along the side, a straight line, a thick line, and so on and so forth. And let's just do it like that. Let's see each other so that we could be with each other.
As you're speaking, I just like your words are conjuring this image that I think went kind of viral like a month ago, or maybe it was 6 weeks ago, of people doing the cha-cha slide outside an ICE detention
Yeah.
center in Portland.
Mhm.
Um, and some of the folks interviewed said, you assume this like this work is heavy. This is heavy work, but it can be joyful too.
I think if we all show up for each other, then we don't have the burnout, right? When I came home, I had so many mentors, just so many people guiding me through different things. I did 27 years in prison, so technology was crazy to me. I couldn't understand it. But I had this one mentor who was in my ear, in my earpods, and following me on the phone. And she said, "No, you're going the wrong way. Go this way. Go that way." She said, "Tell me what you see." Right? I got lost in the train so many times, but in that way, you could be a resource, right? Show up however you can to help people. And if we all do that, the level of burnout will probably burn itself out because we're distributing the work, right? We're all tapping in for each other. Like you had enough. Let me jump in right now, right? And also take time out for yourself. Like you can't take too much work because the world is what it is, and it's just gonna we have to build this community where we take care of each other so we could keep making the change that we need. We just can't take it all on our shoulders. It's just too much.
Yeah, Hector said something about like feeling safe, like go to the place that you feel safe, do what you can from a place that you're safe. And I think what he's saying now is and find the people with whom you feel safe and do the work with them. And there's that's really what this volume is about, right? This is what the solidarity is about. It's like find your people, lighten the load, do it together, share your stories. Don't be afraid to have a voice. People are listening, they are reading, um, they are getting published, right? Like these things are still happening, even when it might feel heavy. Um, and and friendship is a real theme through this volume. People talk about friendships behind walls across the continent. And speaking of like hope and where we are now, I'm sure we're about to wrap up, but I'll just mention there's a great piece in here between two friends, one in Mexico, Carlos de la Rosa, and one in Argentina, Martin Hassinger, and they met in the United States, and they both went back to work on issues of democracy and justice in their home countries, and they're sort of like, a little past us, right? Like they've had real forays like into, authoritarian regimes and crumbling of judicial power. And so for me, like that piece was really interesting to read these two young men who have Yale Law School degrees from other countries be in conversation with one another in their home countries again. And they have so much hope. They have so much hope that they will still build like a legitimate government, right? That they will do this together. And we made sure to, translate that piece into Spanish because they're both native Spanish speakers. But like this is in all these little ways, like that's what we're trying to highlight is like find your people, find your mission, and create it with one another.
And I think that's true. We are wrapping up, but like this saying, like we got us.
Yeah.
I really do believe like that's the way that any of us are going to make it through this moment and all moments. And I think that's true when you're thinking of carceral reform or abolition. I think it's true when people experience a loss, especially a loss that um, is created by entirely man-made issues, right? Like guns are not incidental things that sprang from the earth. Um, yeah, so, but I wanted to ask both of you, just before we wrap up, this is joyful work and hopeful work and heavy work all at the same time. So how do you take care of yourselves? Because you can't work with other people. You can't pour from an empty cup, basically.
That's a struggle for me. It's a huge challenge for me because I feel that since I've experienced incarceration, I feel that it's my job to show what I've experienced in ways that I'm hoping is impactful. But I have a 24-year-old son that reminds me, like, you need to take a break, you need to do this, and you need to do that. But it is a challenge for me, right? Because I just feel that my purpose in this world is to prevent young people from doing the same poor choices that I've made and educating society on when we vote, where do we want our votes to go. So I'm still working on that, but it's a challenge for me.
Yeah, you may have asked the wrong people about how we fill up our cup. No, I mean,
I think it's actually important that people also say, like, I'm not taking care of myself in this. I think
yeah,
it's important for folks to hear that. I don't like that answer. Like, I want both of you to be taking better care of yourselves,
yeah.
just to be
I'll,
clear.
I'll tell you what, I think Hector and I are both in a period where we're really focused on like doing the work. Like I've been at Yale for almost 8 years, and I can tell you the last 4 months were the most intense I've spent there. And that's I was also faculty there running the center during the George Floyd movement. So I've been in this role in some really serious moments in this country. But the last 4 months, it has felt like there's so much to do, and I am like infinitely thankful that at the end of this journey I get to hand people this and feel like, oh, thank God I've created something, and like it will make a difference. So I don't know, you might hear from Hector and I, like I do really feel like we're in a moment sometimes I lay in bed and I think of that saying, like, you'll sleep when you're dead. Like, it does feel a little bit like that to me right now. Like, I'm not willing to slow down right now. I will, but it doesn't feel like the time. And all I'll say is that I love to be outside. I love to be in nature. And I have a horse, and I think they're like, the best. They enrich my soul and make me feel wonderful. So there's a little bit of self-care.
I want to thank you both so much, and remind listeners, if you've been hanging out with us here on WNHH, or if you're just joining us, go back and listen to the conversation. It's been an incredibly rich conversation. I have been talking to Hector Rodriguez and Caroline Nobo about the Notebook, which is releasing through the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School tomorrow night, December 6th, from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at Next Haven, on Henry Street. I am just so grateful that both of you have taken time. I know that time is sometimes our most valuable resource, so thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this, and also just about being in solidarity with each other. I think that is always a message that we need to hear. But it's really a mess. This is like the saddest holiday season that I can think of in a long time. And so I think just being reminded that we have each other and we are each other's keepers is really important. It's always really important. So I want to thank you both so much. And folks, can folks also follow you on social media, whether or not they can make it tomorrow night?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. We have an Instagram and a TikTok, as well as LinkedIn. And then if you go to our website, justicehappenshere.yale.edu, you can sign up for our listserv, and we have events all the time. So it's a great way to stay informed.
And they can get the notebook for free after tomorrow.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
And everyone
absolutely.
should. It's beautiful. I have an advanced copy.
Mhm.
I cried maybe more than a few times. It is really an extraordinary just work of like art and storytelling. So deep gratitude to both of you. I'm so glad this exists in the world.
Well, Lucy,
And
thank you
deep
for
gratitude.
having us,
Yeah,
and
thank
I
you.
Yeah,
appreciate it. And I hope to see you tomorrow and meet you face to face tomorrow.
take care. And have a and oh also and stay warm. I was just
Yes,
talking to someone else just about how cold it is.
yeah,
So stay warm, y'all.
I will.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Harry Joe.